Hi, it's Paul here from selfoutforlife.com, and today I'm going to cover 10 ways to be optimistic. So what is optimism? Well, it's basically feeling hopeful, and particularly feeling hopeful about your future. It's looking forward to your future, and it's that idea or that feeling that your future will be better than today. Now, a pessimist will tend to look at things in a very different way. They'll tend to be fearful about the future. They're afraid of things that are going to happen. They feel anxious about the future, or depressed or miserable. So that's the opposite. Now, we all experience the same challenges. We all have the same events in life. But optimistic people have a different meaning to them. They look at them in a different way to pessimistic people. And what I'm going to do in this video is help you to have that more optimistic view and to change the way that you perceive things and react to things in life. So why is it important to be optimistic? Well, optimistic people achieve more, they accomplish their goals much faster, and they're generally more successful in life. Now, why is that? Well, I believe it's because they're more persistent. They stick with things for longer because they believe that they're going to have a successful outcome. They get past obstacles more quickly, again, because they believe that the outcome is going to be positive. And those obstacles, a more pessimistic person would often give up at that point. So optimistic people are less likely to give up for that reason. They also see more opportunities. So they'll try more things, they'll do more things, so they'll have more success. Because they do more things, they make more mistakes, but they have that positive view that everything's going to work out well. They generally are happier, they're more joyful, they're more cheerful, they're better to be around. They deal better with disappointments because in the back of their mind they know that the future is going to work out well. So they can handle disappointments, they know that they're temporary. They tend to avoid depression and depressive episodes, again because they have that positive hope for the future. They also have a lot less anxiety, and the reason for that is anxiety really arises when you think negatively about the future and you imagine the future negatively. So if you have a hopeful and optimistic and positive view, you believe that the future is going to be better than today, then it's very hard to be anxious because you have to think about the future negatively to be anxious in the first place. And optimistic people are more mentally alert. So I'd like you to think about times in your own life where a lack of optimism led you to giving up something. So maybe it was a diet or an exercise program or looking for a new job or even dating. Ask yourself, what are you not doing now because you believe it's not going to work? When you think of things like that, that is pessimism in action. So that's not doing something because you believe it's not going to work out. You don't believe that you're going to have a positive benefit from doing it. Now, there are 4 parts to optimism. The first part is your thoughts. So this is thinking that your future will be good and pleasant in some way. The second part is your imagination. So this is imagining favorable conditions in your future, imagining that your future will be better than now. The third part of optimism is energy. So we feel hope and excitement about our future. And the fourth part is action. We act as if we're going to get a desirable outcome in the future. So we know that the actions we take now are going to give us good, positive results in the future. So now that you know what optimism is and the benefits of being a more optimistic person, I'm now going to cover 10 ways to be more optimistic. So the first way is to contain the problem to a smaller area. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So let's say you're about to go on holiday with your family and you arrive at the airport and your flight is delayed by 4 hours. How would an optimistic person deal with that? Okay, well, they'd probably be a bit disappointed, maybe a bit annoyed, but they'll probably say something like, well, it's only a flight. I've still got my lovely family with me. I'm still excited about going on holiday. Other parts of my life are unaffected. I've still got great health. You know, my life is good. I'm enjoying the fact that I'm going on holiday, so I can afford to go on holiday. And, you know, I might miss the connecting flight, but that's okay. It's not really going to affect the holiday. It's just a bit of a bad start, but that's okay. as a pessimistic person would say, oh, this is stressful, this is so frustrating, got to hang around at the airport for 4 hours, such a waste of time, and we're going to be rushing at the other end, we might miss the connecting flight, and if we miss the connecting flight, we're going to end up at the hotel really late, we're going to have dinner really late, we're all going to be stressed and emotional, we're then going to get to sleep late, and it's going to mess up the whole of the next day of the holiday as well. And it's going to get the holiday off to a really bad start, and everything's going to go downhill from there. Okay, so can you see how a pessimistic person here is making this problem affect a lot of other areas of life, and really all that's happened is the flight has been delayed by 4 hours. So a key to being more optimistic then is to be able to contain whatever the problem, whatever the disappointment is, to just that small part of your life. So the second way is to forgive and let go. So when something happens that makes you feel pessimistic or negative, know that you can change your perspective and look at that situation in a different way. And also let go of any negative emotions, whether that's anger, frustration, disappointment, sadness. Letting go of those is important, because when you don't do that, those negative emotions tend to hold in those negative thoughts. So you tend to think those negative thoughts more often. And a great way to release negative emotions is the Sedona method, and that's covered in a video which will appear up here right now. And then be able to forgive yourself. So forgive yourself for things that you did or didn't do in the past. And then learn to forgive others. You want to be able to forgive others so that you and your life can move forward. When you're resentful or have a grudge against another person, it's you that experiences that. It's you that's thinking about the other person, not them. So it just doesn't make sense to hold on to that kind of emotion. So learn to forgive others. So the third way is to list 30 things that make you excited. And this one came from Leo at actualize.org, and I'll put a link to his video on this in the description below. So what he says is list 30 things that you're excited about that are likely to happen in the next year. So these could be things like holidays and vacations, could be possible promotions at work, could be getting rid of debts, could be starting a new business. It could be your dream project, it could be losing weight. And the idea is to get really, really specific on what those things are. So get really specific with the detail of those things, because that will help fuel that excitement. And he says take, potentially 20 minutes on this. So spend some time doing this and journaling all these things. And what you'll find is you'll feel more motivated and you will feel different. And what he also suggests actually is before you start writing these down is to notice what your feelings are like before, and then notice what your feelings are like after you've written all those things down. And you almost certainly notice that you'll be more excited, you'll feel more alive, you'll feel more engaged and more optimistic generally. And this is a process you can keep doing consistently, maybe once a month, because new things will start to appear on that list. So that's a great thing to do. So I recommend giving that one a go. So number 4 is to get a good night's sleep. I've found in my own life that if I've had a bad night's sleep, that I find it much harder to be optimistic and positive than when I've had a good night's sleep. I also find that I'm more reactive. I tend to react more emotionally without thinking about things. And I think the reason for that is your brain goes back to like a familiar set point. So if you've been working on yourself for a while and you've become more optimistic as a result, when you have a bad night's sleep, your brain just goes back to what's familiar, which is that older pessimistic self that you used to be. So how do you get around this? Firstly, acceptance. So just accept that you're going to be not as positive and optimistic as you normally are, and just be aware of that and just be okay with that. That's the first thing. And then secondly, if you can, take a power nap. So just up to 20 minutes, just close your eyes and just have a little power nap. I've known on numerous occasions that it's had a huge effect on my level of optimism and positivity. Just 20 minutes, just getting that bit of sleep back. So number 5 is to consult your inner coach. So think about some kind of setback, frustration, disappointment, or just something that's very difficult or something that you feel pessimistic about right now. Then imagine your favorite self-help personal development expert in the room with you. So the person that you really admire. And imagine them, you could imagine what their physiology, their body language would be like, and then notice what they would say to you to help you deal with that setback, frustration, or whatever it is that you're feeling pessimistic about. What questions might they ask you? What advice might they give you? What might they do in the same situation if they just took control of it for you? So if you have a situation where you're really overwhelmed at work because your boss has given you an impossible deadline, well, think about that, and think about that from the view of your coach, your favorite self-help expert. What would they say? What would they do? What questions would they ask? What would they do if they were in that situation themselves? And then imagine taking their advice and acting as if you're that person. So number 6 is to perceive the event as temporary. So when something happens that's disappointing or frustrating in some way, optimistic people see that as temporary, whilst pessimistic people see that as more long-term and permanent. So let's go back to that 4-hour flight delay example. So once the optimistic person is on the plane, they'll probably forget about the delay more or less and just really focus on enjoying the holiday and looking forward to that. As a pessimistic person, whilst on that plane, so after that delay, will be still ruminating about it, still thinking about it and thinking about how it's affecting the holiday in a negative way. And this might go on for days, it might even go on for the entire holiday. Okay, so that's quite a big difference. Now let's take another example. Let's say you lose your job. Okay, so an optimistic person would say, okay, well, look, I've lost my job. These things happen. I'm confident that I'm going to get a new job. I'm good at what I do. I'm actually looking forward to the experience of doing something different and working with a different company and working with different people. As a pessimistic person might say, I've lost my job. I'm never going to find a new job. This is it. My life is ruined. My life will never be the same again. So they're making that event of losing their job much more permanent. And as you can see here, they don't have a positive, optimistic view of the future. They have a view that this one event has now permanently affected the rest of their life. So you can see the difference that that's going to have on the type of action that people are going to take. The optimistic person is going to look forward to applying for new jobs and going through the interview process, as the pessimistic person is more likely to give up and maybe go into some kind of depression, that sort of thing. So number 7 is to correctly identify your role in the situation. So let's go back to that 4-hour flight delay example again. So an optimistic person would say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's not my fault. These things just happen every so often. As a more pessimistic person might say things like, why did I choose this airline? And why does it seem to be that it's always the flights that I'm on that are delayed? So they're personalizing it in some way. And let's go with another example, losing your job. So an optimistic person would say things like, well, these things happen. People lose jobs. The economy changes. People's skills are not in demand anymore, and these things happen. As a pessimistic person might say things like, well, I'm not good enough. Younger people are faster than me, they're better at doing the job than I am, or I don't really fit in anymore with this particular company or culture. Now let's say that these two people get a new job. Well, the optimistic person is now going to think, oh, this is great. I worked hard, I did really well at the interview, and I really deserve this new job. As a more pessimistic person might think, well, the company needed someone, I just happened to be there was no one else available, so they're giving it to me just because I was in the right place at the right time. So there's quite a difference here. The optimistic person believes that they did things, they took action to get that job. As the more pessimistic person thinks, well, it was just in the right time, so doesn't really take responsibility. So that's quite a key thing. The optimistic person took responsibility, took action. The pessimistic person is almost like saying that really they didn't do anything, the job was just there, so they had no role, it just happened, so they're kind of not taking responsibility. So number 8 is to acknowledge what went well, and this is a good one to do on a daily basis, and it consists of asking yourself 2 questions. So the first question is, what did I do well today? And what you do is you list all the things that you did well. These were things where you took some kind of action, you have responsibility for them turning out well. And when you focus on this consistently every day, this will help increase your level of optimism, but also your level of self-confidence, because you're focusing more on the things that you can do rather than the things that you can't do. And then the second question to ask is what went well? And this is more the fluky things that are outside your control. So sometimes things just happen that are great, in that way. And it's good to appreciate and be grateful for those things as well. So what I do, just as I'm in bed, is I think of 5 things that went well, either things that I did well or things that just happened to go well that were maybe outside of my direct control. And you can take that a bit further by beginning to acknowledge what's good about your life and list all the things that you normally take for granted. So the idea of having a gratitude journal, that kind of thing. So the more that you can begin to focus on what is working well in your life, what you're good at, the more that helps you feel and be more optimistic as a person. So number 9 is to focus on the small changes that you can make. So what can you do today to improve an area of your life? It could be something really small, but the key is to take responsibility. Because pessimists tend to worry, instead they blame others, and they believe that they are helpless. But the reality is that you can change more than you think you can. And we always have a choice over how we think and how we act. So what can you do to make this situation better for yourself? And taking positive action will almost always feel better. So number 10, and the last one, is to ask, what else could this mean? So we have situations that happen, sometimes disappointing, sometimes frustrating, and also really good situations as well. And then we have our meaning or perception that we give to that situation. So we have the situation and we have our meaning that we give to it. And going back to that 4-hour flight delay, you've already seen the different meanings that an optimist would give to that compared to a pessimist. Okay? Now, when something happens in life, our brain tends to automatically come up with a meaning, and it's normally the same kind of meaning based on previous experiences. And the brain can be lazy, like our body can be lazy sometimes, like we can slouch on a couch sometimes rather than sit upright. Our brain can do the same thing as well. So the way to get around this is, when some situation happens that you feel pessimistic about, is to ask, what else could this mean? What else could this mean? And list 5 other meanings that you could give that situation. So the example, I've got an example here which could be, you miss out on a promotion at work. And this is a real example. It happened to me in my 20s where I missed out on a promotion. And I was quite negative and resentful about it for a few days. And then I went for a long walk and I thought about it. And I came to a few different meanings, such as, well, by not being promoted, I can continue to do a job that I'm pretty comfortable at and I'm pretty good at doing, and I'm going to feel confident doing, rather than doing a job that would be a step up, that could be a bit more challenging, a bit more out of my comfort zone. It also made me start to think about maybe moving my career in a different direction. So it made me think, maybe I'm more really leaning to doing something else. It made me appreciate having a job and all the people I was working at, because it was a really, really nice company I was working at the time, really, really great social side of it. And I realized that I could learn a lot of good skills in the role that I'm in, and that was absolutely fine. So think about any situation that's disappointing and ask yourself, what else could this mean? And there's a great saying which is, the meaning that anything has is the meaning you give it. Or the only meaning that this has is the meaning you give it. I'm not sure who came up with that quote, but it's one of my favorites. So the only meaning anything has is the meaning you give it. Okay, so they were my 10 ways to help you be more optimistic. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful, and more importantly, do apply these to your own life, and then you'll be able to see yourself becoming more optimistic. Because becoming more optimistic is a learnable skill. Okay, it's not something you're born with, it's something you can develop. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please give it a thumbs up, and do leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. And do subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and click the bell notification. That way you will always be notified whenever I release future videos just like this one. And if you haven't already, do go to my website, that's selfhelpforlife.com. On my website you will find the written versions to many of these videos, also a link to my podcast and to social media as well. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I look forward to sharing more great content with you very soon. Bye for now.